What's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here, and we have another wonderful guest. We have Bryce McKinley from REI Results. How you doing, Bryce?
Too blessed to be stressed, my friend. How are you, sir?
Hey, beautiful day here in Central Texas. I can't complain, man. It's been real pretty these past few days.
Definitely a lot better than the below freezing temperatures we had last year or last week, right?
It changes. It's free. We get a blizzard, and then it's hot the next day. Who knows, right? But
Yeah,
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 absolutely, Bryce. So, for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
yeah, absolutely. Thank you first and foremost, Aaron, for having me on. I'm looking forward to just sharing, even if it's just a little bit of wisdom and knowledge with your audience. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bryce McKinley. I go by Coach Sharpen on Instagram. I come from the corporate Fortune 500 consulting arena. I haven't always been in real estate. And so maybe it's, someone out there listening to me is just like thinking about getting started. I started out in the automotive industry. I've got a lot of sales and persuasion as a tool in my tool belt. That's where most of my experience comes from. As a consultant in the corporate world, one thing that I found really fast to be intriguing is how systemized and processed things were and how simple things really were. And that's what makes business work. And so I took those same skills, applied them to real estate, and here in the last 10 years have just been super blessed. So a little bit more about me. I am a 6-time international best-selling author, speaker, international keynote speaker, coach, mentor, and just a friend. First and foremost, I'm a friend, I'm a husband, I'm a dad. And man, I love life and I love people and really love seeing kind of the light bulb go in or turn on per se, Aaron, when talking to people once start opening up and peeling back those layers of the onion. So thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you pointed at something interesting was you said you used the word systematized, and it kind of seems like in this, this digital age, there's a lot of noise. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to get overwhelmed. It kind of just comes down to, having a plan and executing it, right?
That's it. I mean, you know what they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I noticed that early on in business in general. It doesn't matter what business you're in, if you're selling widgets, you're selling cars, buying or selling houses, that there's 7 steps to every transaction. And so when you understand business and those 7 steps, all of the micro processes that go along with them fall underneath of these different categories. And so you're absolutely right. It's really not as difficult, as overwhelming as it can seem once you understand that.
Yeah, definitely. And these 7 steps, were these, I guess, recently adopted for you, or did you kind of find this out a long time ago and really hone your craft over time, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. At the end of the day, I haven't always been as blessed to have the situation and circumstances that I'm in now. Some of you may be going through some things, trying to just get your business started or take your business to the next level. My journey and how this kind of came about really started when I was 17. I was facing some very serious penalties and criminal charges. And when those cases got dismissed, my uncle gave me a second shot at life, really. He took me and put me in the wash bay at a car dealership that he was running and partners in, started detailing cars. And one snowy December afternoon in the middle of Iowa, he said, if you could sell a car today, I'll put you on the sales team when you turn 18, which was a week later. My birthday's Christmas Eve. So if you guys want to write that down for later and send me something, that'd be greatly appreciated. No, I'm just kidding. But I did. I sold 2 trucks and an SUV that day, and I was hooked on sales and persuasion. I was hooked on kind of that rush. And over the next 2.5, 3 years, I would become the #1 car salesman in the world under the Ford Motor Company umbrella. And how this process came about was when Ford Motor Company started seeing and hearing about what I'm doing and the accomplishments and awards that I would receive over that tenure, they recruited me out of my dealership and hired my first coach and mentor, which is why forever am I grateful to the Ford Motor Company enterprise that they have in their model, because they model after coaching and mentoring and training first and mastering the process. And so, if someone's out there listening to me and you haven't hired a coach or found a mentor to get under, I highly recommend, whether it's me or someone else that you resonate with, but don't waste your time making mistakes that a lot of us have already made ahead of you. And so this process came about when they first hired my mentor, Bill Bowden. I'll never forget, and I'm always grateful for Bill. They put this guy in my life, and he was like 75, 80 years old with the energy of a 20-year-old and just ran around town and the country itself between driving a car and a truck and an airplane all over to appointments, just extracting everything that I was doing out of my brain and then put it into this process. And so he took what I was doing and assigned it to what he knew about business. And we came up with these 7 steps that every business has, whether it's Amazon or Walmart, or you, the wholesaler or flipper or real estate agent, or maybe you're a general contractor running a business. These 7 steps apply to everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny that you brought up Ford. Personally, not very familiar with their model, but it's interesting how you talked about the mentorship and the coaching. It made me think of Tim Grover, right? You never, when you see MJ or you see, the late Kobe Bryant or someone who, achieved that level of success, you normally just see the man. You don't see the man behind the man, right? There was actually a performance coach that was helping Kobe Bryant work on his game too.
Yeah, definitely. And more than just one. One coach to help with the shot, one coach to help with the jump, one coach to help with the speed. Most people never see or understand that most of these, athletes and stars that we idolize, they've got 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 coaches to really isolate the different parts that they need to work on. I mean, my business partner and I, we always have 3 or more coaches. I've got 5 coaches and mentors right now that I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on month in and month out to just help me hone my craft. And so don't take the face value, people behind me, pushing me, pulling me, and sharpening me, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's also about, I guess, I don't know what you call that, paying it forward, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you were, between a rock and a hard spot, and your uncle gave you a shot, right? And I guess it turned out for the better.
Yeah, super blessed and always grateful for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting kind of hearing stories like that, right? Maybe there's a hard time, and there's always some sort of person who maybe gives you a shot, and then it wasn't only him. You out there, you went out and you earned it, automotive industry, and then I guess transitioning to real estate too. Yeah, so I'm curious, what was that transition like? Was there any particular time where you wanted to get out of automotive and move into real estate, or was there any particular moment that really switched for you? Or
Yeah, there was. I call it my ignite moment. I actually, one of my best sellers, I collabed with a whole bunch of authors in this book called Ignite the Entrepreneur, where I tell the story really vividly and emotionally break down what happened. But for time's sake, I'll just share with everyone that I went through a series of unfortunate events. After, in 2006, my wife at the time had, lost a baby, battling alcohol and depression. In 2008, she took her life. Between 2008 and 2010, I literally lost my marbles, 6 and 7 figure contracts right out the window, up my nose and in a bottle, battling alcohol, drugs, and depression. I ended up homeless on the streets as a single parent and didn't really know where I was going. And so the transition for me, Aaron, came again through another series of unfortunate events, just with a different way of reacting versus the first series that I mentioned. And a lot of us have heard the term like fight or flight. Well, in that moment, when I realized September 28, 2011, that I had had enough of this, unlike most people where they get this fire under their butt and they go 100 miles a minute to fight, I decided to flight. And what I mean by that is the same 40 cal that sits next to my bed tonight. It's never jammed since. It had never jammed before. But that night, moving from the back seat of my car to the front seat, I pulled my car out into the middle of the road after being homeless for a little over a year. My little baby boy in the back seat of my car, because I had had a relationship with the girl and gotten custody of this boy. I pulled the trigger. Not once, not twice, but I pulled the trigger 3 times. And when the gun jammed in my mouth, I kind of gave God this ultimatum. And I talk to God like he's my friend. Like, I'm like, bro, show up then. If you want me here, show up. And I gave him this ultimatum, and boy, did he ever. Within the next 30 days, I had an old client find an invoice. They owed me money. They wired me 20 grand. I had an apartment complex call me that had an opening with no deposit, no rent, moved into a really crappy 1-bedroom apartment. I found wholesaling in our industry on YouTube, like a lot of us do. However, the difference between most and myself is I took action. I literally watched 3 videos on YouTube, and I was like, I've got a process. This is a widget. And I started kind of connecting the dots, and I started making phone calls to homeowners that were listing their properties on Craigslist and Fizbo.com and forsalebyowner.com and Zillow as for sale by owners. And I just started calling people and making the connections with people and having conversations. And that's where the whole sales and persuasion training that I've perfected really comes into play, because most people don't understand how to articulate an effective conversation to move someone. And so I just started applying those same principles to the real estate space. And so that transition or entry into real estate came from not just a place of desperateness, but it came from a place of desire, because I seen the opportunity and I acted on it. And so my first month in the business, I contracted like 23 houses. My second month in the business, really, I spent trying to figure out how the heck to sell them. We only ended up closing 5. And I say we because I ended up partnering with another company here locally in Dallas. And then my third month, they were like, why don't you just come do sales and acquisitions? And I'm like, no, let's partner up. And so I negotiated a deal with them where they're like, if you can do what you did the first month, we'll make you a minority partner. And so I did that. My third month technically in the business, second month actively working in the forward position of the 7 steps, which is marketing and sales. I did that exactly. I contracted 37 houses, and we ended up closing 35 of those 37. And the rest is history, man. Been blessed ever since, and really just found kind of my spoke in the wheel of real estate, which is wholesaling and flipping. And because of the situation I was in, we've done all of this and helped thousands of others do it 100% virtually over the last 10 years.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I guess, really starting from the beginning, right? You're in a hard place, pulling the trigger, asking for a sign, and sure enough, you get it. And it kind of seems like the world just kind of unfolded for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. It's one thing to kind of look around the internet. I know you mentioned how it's easy to kind of digest these videos, and you walk away and you feel great and you think, wow, that seems really cool, right? That sounds like something I can do, and then never taking action. But it speaks volumes that you actually went out and did it.
Yeah, I truly believe that God works best with moving cars and not parked ones. So you've got to put it into drive, and you've got to move, even if it's in reverse. Like, make some movement, and you'll find things that happen around you that will either help you or hold you back. And when it's holding you back, switch gears and go in a different direction, but keep moving, keep pushing. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, and it's interesting as well, kind of how that kind of unfolded, whether it was, you said putting it, not just staying in park, right? Putting in reverse or having some sort of movement. It's incredible what momentum can do to really, really propel you forward, I guess, the way you have been, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heck, this last week and a half, we've had to let 3 of our most tenured persons go on our team because they weren't on the same path. They weren't on the same mission that we were. And while that hurt and had us step back and kind of go in reverse briefly, it's actually giving us the momentum and opening other doors to move forward faster, further in our own personal business. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just curious as well, you mentioned how you do a lot of the wholesaling, for someone who's new to the industry, maybe they have some cash they're looking to invest, or they're just looking to get a better grasp, on what exactly y'all do. What is wholesaling?
Yeah, great question. Wholesaling is very similar to the Amazon, right? Amazon is the middle person between A, the consumer, and B, the manufacturer, right? And so when we look at that model, the wholesaler is the person in the middle. They connect sellers with buyers, just like a realtor would in the traditional retail sense. However, we're dealing with products that are distressed situations. A lot of people in our industry like to look at distressed properties. I don't like that model. I really don't, because when you pigeonhole yourself to a distressed property, you can't help any more people, right? It's just all about the house and the numbers. And so the way that we look at this is we look at distressed situations, whether it's debt or divorce or heirship or disease, and there's all of these different scenarios that happen that could cause someone to need to sell a house. And then in those situations, you tend to find most of the time the properties are distressed, but now you get a property under contract or have a conversation that leads to a contract, step number 3, and then number 7 steps of the 7 there. You have a conversation that leads to a contract, and then you take that and you market it out to your buyers. I noticed that I said sellers before buyers. Most coaches and mentors are like, you got to build your buyers list. You got to do networking. I'm here to tell you, you don't. You don't. When you get a contract on a house for the right price, the buyers will come. The lenders will come. The title companies will show up. So go start talking to sellers. So once you talk to a seller, or in the Amazon model, the manufacturer, right, where the process starts, now the second half of that, steps 3, 4, and 5, or 4, 5, and 6 on the backside of that 7-step equation, now you market that property to buyers. Buyer leads come in. You have another secondary conversation that leads to a second contract. And the difference between the two contracts is what we call a assignment fee, or we're taking the second contract and buying or adhering to that first contract. So you've got a contract with the seller, a contract with the buyer, and the two contracts combined together go to the title company. And when that deal's closed and funded, you get paid the difference in the middle. So for example, Aaron, let's say that I contract your house for $100,000. And I turn around and sell that paperwork for $110,000 to someone else, another buyer, an end buyer. Well, those two contracts ride to title, and that $10,000 difference in the middle becomes an assignment fee or a transaction fee. And you, as the wholesaler, get to take part in that and get paid for coordinating that transaction. So that's how I describe it. Most people do it differently, but I believe that talking to sellers first and then the buyers makes for a much easier and more profitable and a faster income generating activity process.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting nuance you have there as well, because it kind of seems counterintuitive, right? Everyone kind of, at least from what I know about wholesaling, it's more of, hey, build your buyers list. You have to have buyers. Whereas, let's say you build this big buyers list and you don't have anything to show them, right? So you need to talk the opposite.
Spin your wheels, wasting time is what I call that.
Yeah, no, that's a great distinction there. And it kind of sounds like anything, just kind of, taking a step back and really kind of seeing, hey, maybe there's another way to look at this, right?
Yeah. And it's no difference. I mean, whether you're selling cars, one of my acquisition guys was the best salesman in a home improvement sales company. And he came through one of our challenges that we do in our Facebook group. And he took what he applied and learned from these 7 steps that I teach to his sales position over here. And he became, in 3 months or less, I think it was right at 90 days, the number 1 salesperson. And he was just having better conversations because he understood the process. And I'm a firm believer, Aaron, that before you add systems, before you add stuff to the mix, master the process.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said for that. I guess, what do they say? Putting the cart before the horse, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, maybe when you're working with people, or maybe just when you're dealing with salespeople in general, people who are marketing or selling or whatever, what do you kind of think are maybe a few issues that they have at first, I guess, before they're really starting to gain momentum and hone their craft?
Great question. I would say it's twofold. The number 1 challenge that most people overcome or need to overcome is simply the fear of talking to people. That's it. People get scared to talk to people. I work with thousands of people every year, and a lot of them are different than I am. They're not as outgoing. They're more analytical, or they're more introverted, whereas I'm super extroverted. Everybody's my friend, right? But not everybody feels that kind of way. And so just that simple fact of getting over that fear is probably the number one challenge that I first see, even with people that are extroverted. Like, what do I say? How do I say it? Where do I say what? What do I need to be talking about? And it's just simply a matter of telling people what you do, because when you tell people what you do or what your goals or intentions are, they'll let you know really fast if they have a need or desire to work with you. And so if you're an introverted person and you're a more analytical person and you're like, I'm not good at talking to people, well, just start telling them what you do. Hey, I'm a real estate investor. And you'll find they'll ask you questions. What does that mean? Well, I help people buy and sell properties typically, and you'll start to open that conversation up. The second thing, and the probably even more prevalent, once people start opening up, the mistake that most people make is what I call the German Shepherd effect. Most people, Aaron, they go into conversations with the idea that I've got to find something in common with this other person. And when I do, we can talk about that all day long. Oh, wow, you're a hunter? I love to hunt. I just bought a new 12 gauge. What kind of weapons do you use when you go hunting? What do you hunt for? Oh, you're a dove hunter. You hunt dove and pheasant? Oh, I used to go with my dad dove and pheasant hunting when I was a kid, and da-da-da. And they try to build this commonality between the two of them by telling stories about themselves. Mm-hmm. And a tough pill that I learned to swallow really fast and at a very young age is that people don't care about you. As harsh as that sounds, nobody wants to hear about how you did it, what you did, and where you did it. They want to know, how do you benefit them? How can we work together? Is this a good fit? Do I know, like, or trust you, right? The old saying is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. I don't believe that. Notice the difference. Know, like, and trust versus know, like, or trust is what I say. Mm. You don't have to know me to like me. You don't have to trust me to know me. You don't have to like me or know me to trust me. And people do business with people that they know, like, or trust. And when you start to understand that, then you can say, gosh, let me help this person like me, or help this person trust me, or help this person get to know me. And how do we do that? By getting the other person to open up and feel more comfortable. And how do we do that? By letting them talk more about themselves. And when we talk more about the other person and the conversation's more about the other person, oh, wow, you're a hunter. How long have you been hunting? 20 years. So you've been doing this since you were a kid. Did your dad take you out, or did you go with the uncles or brothers? Who'd you go with? Oh, you and your dad went out? That's rewarding, right? We start to make it about them and asking questions about them. They'll lay down the farm, give you more money, let you buy their house, take the construction job that you're bidding, whatever it is. And now you're not only their best friend, but they're going to tell everybody about what you do. I just had a lead come in today. The house that we put under contract first thing this morning, Aaron, this is the 5th house that I've bought from this lady and or her friends and family. It was a referral from a lady who I bought 3 or 4 houses from, and 2 or 3 from her other friends. And then now another 5th or 6th one. I don't know where we're at in the chain, but it's like the 5th or 6th house in the last 10 years from her and her sphere of influence. Why? Not because I talked about what I did, but I did what they needed me to do. Does that make sense?
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's you made a great distinction there between the, hey, I used to go pheasant hunting, I used to go dove hunting, me, my dad, my mom, whatever. Whereas, you kind of making it about them. Oh, you must have been doing this for a long time. There's a very nice distinction there.
Yeah, thank you. I've been doing this a little while, my friend. I've been blessed to help a lot of people get over the fear of speaking in conversations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially when you make it about them too. I find it so interesting. I smiled because I remembered this compliment I got. This girl gave me this compliment probably, I'll say, about 6 years ago. And to this day, I still remember that compliment.
I'm curious, what did she say?
I was telling a story about us to one of our other friends. And I guess maybe she liked the way that I told the story, but it was just the way that she complimented me. I still remember that years later,
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting kind of hearing that phrasing, making about you versus them, right? But yeah, no, I mean that's a great point to touch on in terms of some pitfalls that people can have. It kind of sounds like there's a lot of, I'm assuming, mental work you would need to do to be able to excel in wholesaling.
Yeah, it's definitely a mental game. There's a lot of negativity coming from people that have distress situations for sure. They want to take it out on you. And if as long as you don't make it about you and don't take it personal, you can overcome and be uber successful in this industry.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Aaron, I'm a firm believer of just give the people what they need. And so you've asked the questions, and I hope that this has, touched and influenced someone to just go out and take action, and realize like we're all at different levels. And if we don't compare ourselves to the idol that we see on the screen or the influencer that we follow or the transactions that's happening at our local RIAs. Like if we don't compare where we're at to them and start looking at where we are versus where we came from, we can see the growth that happens with it. And that's half the battle. The other half of the battle is taking that growth and being intentional about it and reaching out and grabbing hold of somebody that's already trudged the path ahead of them and trusting the process. And so, if there was anything else that I was going to share, it would be simply that. Find somebody that's doing what you want to do, whether it's having conversations, come find me. If it's doing wholesaling or flipping virtually, like all of the thousands of people that my team and I have been able to help, come find me. If it's finding or, funding or lending, reach out to Aaron. But whatever you do, just don't do nothing. You got to move. You got to move.
You got to move. That's it. I think that's that's probably the highlight reel of the show. You got to move, right? And you even talked about it before, whether you're putting the car in reverse or putting it in drive, you got to move it somehow, right?
Yeah. I like the saying, I was in a mastermind about 2-3 weeks ago, and the mastermind that I'm a part of has some pretty highly influential people. And one of my personal friends and favorite mentors I've ever had is the John C. Maxwell. He is like the godfather of leadership. And he described life as a puzzle, and not just the puzzle that we buy at the store on the shelf in the games and kids section, but a puzzle that maybe we found in a baggie at a garage sale, where we get to try and piece it together along the way. And we only see what we got when we look back and see how far we've come. And so, I just want to encourage you, if you're in the sound of my voice, go find somebody, hire smart people to tell you what to do. The investment is worth it. And you'll save yourself a whole bunch of time, money, and headache and heartache.
Absolutely, Bryce. Maybe we're in your backyard. We're somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or in another part of the country, or another part of the world. Where can we find you?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Aaron. The easiest thing to do is go to Google, right? Go to Google and type in my name, Bryce McKinley. You can't miss me. I'm all over the internet. I respond personally. My team will let me know if I've got a personal message. So reach out to me. If I don't get back to you within 24 hours, I'm probably laid up in a hospital bed. So I'm pretty good about getting back to you or setting something up. You can find me on Facebook at Bryce McKinley, or on Instagram at Coach Sharpen. We've also got a free group that's got over 4 years of coaching calls and group coaching calls, special guest speakers once a month, and cold calls. If you want to go listen to what cold calls or seller calls and buyer calls sound like, that name of that group is called Virtual Wholesaling Real Estate Tips and Techniques. Virtual Wholesaling Real Estate Tips and Techniques. Jump into that group, drop your information so that we can send you more information, and reach out to my team and I. We also just published a book that went international bestseller. It's called The 5-Hour Flip. It's literally the 5 steps and 7 steps to over 10,000 transactions that my team and I have either done personally or helped thousands of others do. And highly recommend grabbing that book. You can grab that book at the number 5-hourflip.com. 5hourflip.com, 5hourflip.com. It's $7. It'll be the best investment you've ever made into your business because it breaks down the systems into processes so simplistically. I think it's like 50 or 60 pages. It's a short, easy read. If I can do it, having little to no formal education, you can do it too.
Absolutely, Bryce. That definitely wraps it up. I've certainly enjoyed our convo, talking a bit about, your background, some bumps in the road, you eventually overcoming and, being able to, to be in the position where you're at and, your wealth of knowledge. And, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me on.
Have a good one.
You too. God bless.